So much of our behavior is dictated by our identity and who we believe ourselves to be. And what makes this so, dangerous sometimes is that so much of our identity is unconscious. It's not what we're consciously aware of, right? It's more so the underlying things, the things we don't think about, the things we don't know about ourselves that control a lot of what we do day in and day out. And what makes the situation even more sticky is the fact that we don't really get to choose our identities. Like, we don't get to choose our names, we don't get to choose our race, we don't get to choose our country of origin, we don't really get to choose how intelligent we are, and that kind of dictates the type of work that we can do. We don't get to choose our families, right? All these things contribute to who we are, right? And all these things have influence over not only how we see ourselves, but how we see the world and what we think is possible for ourselves in the world. It's very important to understand this when it comes to things like self-sabotage, because if you, like I, have a bad habit of self-sabotage, you, like I, have probably also assumed that the reason why you self-sabotage is because you're not good enough, or you're inadequate, or you're missing something, or, other people have all these things that make them successful, but for whatever reason, you or I are missing that one thing or those two things that would push us over the edge and get us to that place that we want to be. And what I discovered about a year and a half ago is that the reason why I had such a bad habit of self-sabotaging was not because I wasn't good enough, was not because I was actually inadequate, was not because, I was missing this one thing that I told myself over and over and over that I didn't have, but rather because on the inside, I felt unworthy. I felt deeply, deeply unworthy of success. And because I felt unworthy of success, because I felt unworthy of other people's attention or admiration or respect, I would often get into these situations where I get this idea and I have a ton of inspiration. I feel very passionate about it. And I'd work super hard at it for 3 months or 6 months or 8 months, and I finally put it out. And then, I don't know, maybe I expected it to get, let's say, 100 likes, and it only got, 20 likes. And then immediately I'd be deflated and feel like, well, this is why I don't do anything anyway, because nobody really cares. And for a long time, I thought that was why. It was because I wasn't good enough, and because I wasn't good enough, I wasn't getting the results that I wanted, and this is why everything kept failing for me. But the more and more I sat with it and the more and more I thought about it, the more and more I realized that it really wasn't an issue with other people. It was an issue with me. And a large part of why I self-sabotaged was because I was afraid of what being successful looked like. And more than that, I was afraid of what if I did actually put my heart into this? What if I did actually commit to this thing for longer than 3 or 6 months? And then I failed. And then it'd be like, well, damn, I really am as inadequate as I thought I was, right? And so what I think self-sabotage masks as often is, or what it does mask, is a fear. It's the fear of having the inadequacy that we feel deep down validated, right? It's sort of like the abandonment wound, where people who have an abandonment wound will often leave a situation before they are left. And the reason why they leave that situation before they're left is because it makes them feel like they still have control over, what's happening. It takes a situation where you feel like you don't have any control, where someone who you love or someone that you want to be with you abandons you, and you say, well, no, instead of you leaving me, I'm going to leave you. And that way I still maintain a sense of control, a sense of power. And I've learned that self-sabotage is really similar, because what it is we tell ourselves, well, nobody cares anyway, or it's not going to work anyway, so let me just go ahead and quit now so that I can save face, so I can save myself the pain of having to see when it wouldn't work later, right? And so beneath self-sabotage is really just a lot of fear. And beneath that fear is an identity that says, well, I'm not good enough anyway. So I just want to speak quickly about how I discovered this within myself. About a year and a half ago, I was with my ex-partner, my partner at the time, and we went to go visit some family of hers. And one of her uncles is this older black man. He's a psychologist, a retired psychologist, but he worked in psychology for, I don't know, an extremely long time, 20, 30, 40 years. And he and I had had a conversation that was really insightful. Like, I don't meet a lot of, especially older black men, in that field, and can have the sort of conversations that I like to have about, psychology, self-awareness, spirituality, growth and development, healing, and all those things. And he and I talked for about 2 or 3 hours, had an amazing conversation. It was amazing to pick his brain and just kind of, resonate with someone on that level, because I don't get to do that often, especially in the older black man. Being a black man myself, again, I don't have too many situations where I get to have those sort of interactions with older black men. So it was really fulfilling. Had the conversation, went great. I was really pleased to meet him. His name is Oath, really great guy. And then about 2 weeks later, I was riding in the car with my partner, and Otha called her, and she answered the phone on speakerphone in the car, hands-free. And Otha didn't know that I was in the car with her, so she answered the phone. They say hello, hello, whatever, do some small talk. And towards the end of the conversation, Otha tells her, hey, I really liked talking to your friend Michael. He's really insightful. We had a great conversation. I love the way that his mind works, and I'd really love to have a conversation with him again. And again, Otha didn't know that I was in the car, and he didn't know that I heard this. And so what took me aback was the first thing that I felt when I heard him say that wasn't pride, wasn't happiness, wasn't validation, wasn't, any of these nice things that hearing someone you admire say something nice about you would assume you would feel by those things. What I actually felt was disbelief. What I actually felt like was, he's lying. Like, I don't believe you. Like, why would you say this thing that isn't true? And it really made me stop and think for a minute, because, again, Otha didn't know that I was in the car. He didn't know that I was listening on that conversation. Two, he's an older black man. And if you know anything about older black men, like, they don't lie. They don't have any reason to lie. They're not going to lie to spare your feelings. And Otha certainly isn't one to lie to spare your feelings. And three, it was like, it just kind of made me stop and reflect on the fact that not only do I have a hard time accepting compliments, I had a hard time believing compliments. And it really, for the first time, made me stop and wonder why that is. Like, I think a lot of people who have, like, inadequacy wounds, or, like, just feeling not good enough, feeling unwanted, feeling like, nothing that they do would be accepted by others, probably have a lot of rejection in their past. And I don't, you know what I mean? For the most part, my interactions with strangers are positive, and that's not to say I've never had negative interactions. That's not to say I've never been criticized or bullied or anything like that, because I have. But it's just like, for the most part, my interactions with strangers throughout my life, or people who don't really know me, have been positive. People usually have genuinely kind things to say about me. And I guess I just recognized that despite that, I've never really believed them. And it kind of hit me for the very first time that this inadequacy that I felt, this unworthiness that I felt, what I discovered what it actually is unworthiness, was due to how I saw myself and not necessarily how other people saw me. And this was a real epiphany for me, because I've always been someone who's had a lot of self-worth, right? I've always had someone who's had this maybe oftentimes overinflated sense of self, maybe oftentimes overinflated confidence or, self-esteem. And so it kind of blew my mind that I would be feeling unworthy. But that's one of the things I discovered, and that is that worthiness and self-worth aren't really the same thing. Self-worth is how you feel about yourself, right? And so I could have a lot of self-worth and still feel unworthy, because what I discovered is that worthiness is about how you feel like you're perceived by others. And so I started asking myself over and over again, like, why do you feel unworthy? Why do you feel unworthy, Michael? Why do you feel unworthy? What is it about you in particular that makes you feel like other people wouldn't like you or whatever? And of course, this took me back to childhood, where it starts for a lot of us. And I started to think about the things that made me feel unworthy as a child. For me personally, I was growing up black in a, pretty racially segregated town, growing up poor, growing up, as a very sensitive boy and being around people who made it seem like being sensitive as a boy was the wrong thing to be. And the more and more I reflected, I started thinking, well, all right, these things are true. I did feel, poor. I did feel hurt about being black and feeling unaccepted. I did feel hurt about being sensitive and not being accepted in that way. But these are all things that I've worked through in adulthood. So why is that unworthiness wound still there? Long story short, I eventually found out why that unworthiness wound was still there. And a big part of why it was still there is because why I feel unworthy is the wrong question. And I fully intend to tell you what the right question is in tomorrow's video. So hopefully you'll be back and join me for that. But I guess I want to wrap this video up by saying unworthiness is a learned thing. It's not inherent. No one comes into this world feeling unworthy. No one comes into this world knowing what unworthiness is. No one comes into this world feeling inadequate or like they're not good enough or that they don't deserve everything in life that, they want to get. And so once we understand that unworthiness is learned, like it's not this thing that we carry, it's not this thing that we're born with, then that's liberating in and of itself, because that means that we can unlearn unworthiness, you know what I mean? It's something that we've picked up along the way and something that we can put down. And I really want to make this video as evidence that you can put the unworthiness down, because once I recognized the root of the unworthiness, and once I recognized that it wasn't something that was actually within me, but rather a belief that I held about myself, I was able to put it down. And my life has been drastically different over the past year and a half. I no longer self-sabotage. I no longer feel that I'm unworthy of success. I no longer feel like I need to be validated by tens or hundreds or thousands of people in order for, what I'm doing to be meaningful. And that's all because I was able to recognize that, well, one, that I felt unworthy, and two, why I felt unworthy, and kind of give that unworthiness back to where I got it from versus carrying it on my own. So I say all that to say this. Nobody is born unworthy. You don't have to live unworthy. You don't have to die unworthy. And once we understand that unworthiness is really just a bad lesson that we picked up along the way, and that we can unlearn this lesson at any point, then we can put it down and continue to live our lives the way that we intended to. So my name is Michael Sinclair. I am a growth guide. I'm honored that you clicked on this video. I hope that you'll stick around. My plan is to do daily videos and kind of mimic newsletters. So I've been doing newsletters surrounding self-growth for over a year now. And I kind of want to mimic those, at least to start, just so I can have some way to, keep momentum going. Tomorrow we're going to talk about what I discovered was the root of this unworthiness and how I was allowed to put it down. And then the rest of this week, the goal is to continue to focus on worth and worthiness. So again, thanks for being here. Hopefully we'll see you tomorrow. And if not, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Peace.